I just want to come back to something that you mentioned there, which was that you piloted the self-service program, or what would enable that program with the user research team before you rolled it out. And then you also mentioned there you had your park wardens, which
Mm,
were essentially designers that are volunteering their time to help ensure that the park is well maintained and looked after.
mhm,
I just want to talk about that for a second because I don't want to underestimate the achievement of that. Because you talked about culture, and in order to generate a positive research culture, you have to work with people outside of research operations to achieve that.
mm,
What were the conversations that you were having with people in user research and people in design to enable this to happen?
mm. So the first point on this is I was speaking to someone the other day and showing them this, and I realized, oh my God, this is my third community, just internally. Again, it's kind of bringing people together on a voluntary basis. Um, it was very interesting because we ran an early adopter program with 8 teams outside of research and impact, and so our piloting was kind of twofold. First, we built and piloted within the research team, and when we had learned from the researchers also what they agreed with in terms of quality.
Mm,
We had 3 platforms that do sort of like the user interviews, respondent, askable are sort of the 3 main ones,
mm-hmm,
and we chose the one that we chose for reasons of quality, and it suited us. But we couldn't have gotten there without that engagement with the researchers and them using that tool. And so they helped us really maybe in an unknowing way, but they helped us shape up what our park pathways would look like and where they would go, and what trees would keep and what would get cut down. Um, and then when we took it out into the wider organization, we picked 8 teams, and worked with them. And it's those design leaders I spoke to and said, "Is there someone on your team who might like to be an enabler of research in their team?" And so we were unsure of what a research champion would become, but they would pick someone who was a really great collaborator and multiplier,
mm-hmm,
and was like genuinely keen on helping to make research more easily done within their team. And the teams were so desperate for. Remember, we'd kind of stepped away and left them high and dry for a little while in order to come back with something that was much more sustainable and scalable. And so they were really desperate to have tools that could help this. And so
mm,
initially we had kind of a very, very ill-defined, or well-defined in the sense that it had very little definition, which actually suited that context of what a champion would be. And we were thinking, well, this would be to bring us feedback from the team and tell us when something wasn't working well,
mm,
um, and to come to meetings and really understand our processes, so that they knew what tool was coming out when, or to send people to the handbook, or what channel that they should like ask on in Slack, things like that, so that we just get a lot less of those questions. We don't get any of those questions from the team members because the champion handles that all. But what the champions did was they took those sort of more administrative tasks, and they elevated the role to something that we hadn't expected, which is beautiful.
mm,
And they started to, as the person who had access to the recruitment tool, which at that point had a budget on it. We allocated 25 participants per team per quarter.
mm-hmm,
That allocation of budget and that constraint meant that teams were starting to prioritize what research could happen and when.
mm-hmm,
And the other constraint is time. It's not like unmoderated. You can't throw it in and leave it and come back and have insights overnight. You have to spend time with people, and you've got to do the recruiting.
mm,
The recruiting had gone down from 2 weeks to a week, depending on the complexity of your recruit, but it was a lot quicker using these tools and processes. But they then became these kind of people who were leading the discussion and working with their leadership on what research was important and when, which then kind of rolls up into roadmaps and
mm-hmm,
what needs to happen. And so the champions who really kind of took on that role. They love it, and some of them recently, when we've now expanded to the entire organization beyond those first 8 teams, actually just a couple of weeks ago, they said, as long as I can keep my role as the champion, I'm happy.